Hello, I'm Oscar Holland. Welcome back to Chezzetcook. Episode 6 is all about the port of Chezzetcook. Today I'm going to be building a container port and an oil tanker pier. I'll also be building the industrial area around the port. Before that though, I'm going to be improving some highway infrastructure, creating a large interchange. Industry creates a lot of traffic, so I'll need this upgrade to handle all that traffic. The plan is to change this area to make this road crossing the highway lead directly to the suspension bridge over Chezzetcook Inlet. Eventually I'll have a bridge over here to cross the Chezzetcook Inlet heading towards Halifax, Nova Scotia. First, I've got to delete the old roads which had the vehicles traversing two separate intersections to get from the bridge to the east-west highway. The new interchange will allow vehicles to get from the main north-south divided highway, the east-west highway, or from the industrial area to any one of those options with minimal intersections. It took me a while to come up with the eventual outcome, so what you're seeing is an extremely cut down version. The best solution I could find to link these three routes up involved this roundabout and a few loops. It's definitely not the prettiest interchange, but the solution works well. The main mods needed to make it look and function nicely are obviously Move It, Node Controller, TMP, and Intersection Marking Tool. You'll see some markings later on in the cinematics. I did try using Network Multitool, but I think I need to play around with that a bit more. After getting all the roads down, I like to watch the traffic for a while and make sure there's no weird behaviors caused by the mods. Adjust some speed limits, and generally make sure that the roads are smooth and flow nicely. So here you see what has until now just been a dumping ground of industrial buildings and assets. I haven't paid much attention to it, just some necessary services to keep the city functioning, and just stuff to generally fill the background. But now it'll be the bustling port of Chezzetcook. First thing is shaping the shoreline with the industrial key and backfilling the area behind it. The important part is using the height alignment tool in Move It to make sure that they're all the same height. To make sure I have the right height, I use a prop cargo ship as a guide. Chezzetcook Port will also have a functioning shipbuilding yard. This will be my first time playing with the Industries DLC, but a little more on that later. Starting on the container port, I use these massive ship-to-shore cranes which are entirely for aesthetics. The container port will function using just one small building from the concrete dock pack, which also includes a plain non-functioning dock and a passenger terminal, which I'm also using in Chezzetcook. You can find all my mods and assets in the Steam Workshop collections linked in the video description. I've made container ports in previous cities, including detailing lines on the concrete, but back then I didn't have intersection marking tool. So this time I made the guidelines using the mod on these concrete road networks. Once I made one segment, it was just a case of copy and paste it to the other segments. And once you've made a whole row and place the container props on top, use Move It to copy the whole thing as many times as you need. I placed some roads between every other stack, and that's the big stuff done. I then waited for a cargo ship to arrive just to make sure that the building was placed correctly so that the ship wasn't smashing into the quay or hanging out too far away. One mod I highly recommend is Optimized Outside Connections, which allows you to control the frequency of things like cargo ships, passenger ships, and trains. The game tends to send way too many with loads not even close to capacity. This mod improves that issue. So now I'm happy with how the port functions, it's time to add some detail. I'm numbering each stack similar to what I've seen in real life container ports. This took a while but was totally worth it. Once I had all the decals in place, I sank them down into the ground using the page down button. This works well to fade a lot of decals that are too bright and too bold, making it look slightly more worn. Next to the containers, I wanted to add this little area for other materials like wood, pipes, and crates that are imported but are not in containers. I also got rid of the street lights that attach to the roads using Network Skins mod, and manually placed some larger industrial lighting. I was going to say that the prop line tool mod works well for this, but recently I changed that mod and a lot of other mods I've used for a long time for the Bob prop and tree anarchy mods. Function's basically the same, but it's 3 mods that have replaced about 15 in my list. I used the same networks for the 20-foot containers and then started adding props around the port, like empty trailers and pallet stackers. The Industries DLC comes with a bunch of awesome warehouses, including this one, but one thing about a lot of vanilla assets is they include vanilla trees and props. The Bob Prop and Tree Replacer mod is a game changer. I'll be demoing it a bunch in this video. Like here you can see I use the mod to remove the vanilla containers from this building. I then manually placed my own. The next mod that proved vital to this build was building spawn points. The trucks here were clogging up the parking lot, so I moved that spawn and unspawn point to the side of the building, making them actually use the loading dock areas. A few more details around the port, and then another first for me was trying out the procedural objects effects modules. To bring the gantry cranes to life, I used the back and forth effect to have a few of them moving around. It's really not too complicated, and I look forward to trying out more of the effects modules. Apart from maybe a few more things I do off camera, that's just about it for the container port. Next I start playing with some Industries DLC stuff. Still a lot to cover, but stick around for the cinematics at the end. Be sure to like and subscribe if you're enjoying the video. So I placed the shipyard thinking it would be just for show, but then I decided that I wanted to make it function. I've not played with the industry stuff much, so I wanted to try. Turns out the shipyard needs a bunch of materials, starting with planed timber, which means I need to build a sawmill, which means I need to build a forestry area. For this we're going to head out of the city. I'm not going to show too much of the building of the industrial areas, more or less just where they are and what they're producing. I will demonstrate how awesome the Bob Prop and Tree Replacer is again though. Here I'm able to change the vanilla trees in the forest resource into the style of the tree I'm using throughout Chezzetcook. Definitely looks much better. The mod allows you to decide whether you want to replace the prop or trees on that one building, on all the buildings of that type, or on all buildings in the city. I used to turn buildings into procedural objects to remove unwanted props and trees, but that obviously removes the functionality of the building. This is much better. Next is plastics, which is an oil product. This is actually what inspired me to build the oil tanker pier you'll see later in the video. But first, I built a very small industrial area to get the products flowing. Again, I used Bob to change the vanilla containers to match the ones I'm using from the Steam Workshop. I didn't have any oil in the city map, but with the natural resource tool, I'm able to add whatever resources I want. So I just put some oil in the ground here to make it function. I have resources set to never deplete, so this will work indefinitely. I believe the best way to keep a steady stream of materials going to the shipyard is to have a warehouse close by with the required resource. That way if your supply chain gets interrupted, there's at least some materials close by to keep production going. The next 2 products, glass and metals, come from the ore industry. For this we're heading to the other side of the map. Essentially no details in this one, just getting the resources flowing. The distance from the city is another example of why warehousing is so important to Industries. I've got one for each of the 4 resources needed close to the shipyard. This next part of the build mimics another iconic part of the Halifax city skyline. Well, actually Dartmouth's skyline, Halifax's twin city across the harbour. This is obviously inspired by Tufts Cove, a thermal power generating station. It functions burning oil or sometimes coal. To build it I placed 3 chimneys which produce in-game power, and then decorated it using a couple of procedural object buildings. It was at this point I realized that the shipyard actually builds a ship. I thought that was pretty cool. At this point it's just missing metals. It makes me wonder whether the other unique factories have products that are visible. Back at the power station, I wanted to bring it to life, so I used another PO effects module, this time to generate steam. I actually used 4 steam effects, each one getting larger but less dense as it went higher, to make it look like the steam was dissipating into the air. I think it turned out really well, and it's probably my favorite part of this whole area. Finally, I'm building the oil tanker pier. At this point, I hadn't downloaded any oil tanker cargo ship yet, so I just used the prop cargo ship from earlier to get the scale roughly right. I did go and grab some from the workshop before building too much to make sure it was alright. Now, I'm definitely no expert in the loading and unloading of oil from a tanker. I looked at some satellite and Google images of oil tanker piers, and they all seem to have these platforms. I'm not entirely sure what the purpose is, so if you know, please let me know in the comments. I found some other relevant assets like a marine loading arm, which I believe pumps oil on and off of the ship. Here you see the large oil tankers. Now I'm building a small area behind the main pier where the pilot boats will moor. I think I need to get some proper tugboats, but this will do for now. Coming up is the final shot of the oil tanker pier. But that's it for today's episode. Next episode, I think you'll see some expansion of the residential areas and maybe the city's first bus line. Thanks for joining me, enjoy the cinematics, and I'll see you next time.